Good evening, members, and welcome to this meeting of full council. I'm Councillor Justin Wrench, Chairman of the Council, and I'll be chairing this meeting this evening. This meeting is being webcast via the Council's YouTube channel, and please can everyone present ensure their mobile phones and devices are switched to silent to avoid any unnecessary disruptions. This meeting is scheduled for up to 3 hours, and I would be grateful if everyone could ensure that they keep their speeches concise and to the issues being considered. And if members do wish to speak this evening, please can you indicate by clearly raising your hand. Please note that we are not expecting a fire alarm. However, in an event of a fire alarm, please leave via the fire exits and assemble in the car park. I'll now proceed to the first item of business, agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I've received apologies for absence from Councillor Iona Parker, Councillor Camilla Finch and Councillor Paul Heath. Are there any further apologies to note? Councillor Edwards?
Yes, apologies, Chair. Further apologies from Councillor Peter Schweer, Councillor Cindy Rajiv and Councillor Ethan Williams. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edwards.
Councillor Thorogood.
Thank
Apologies.
you, Councillor Abbott. Yeah, Councillor Thorogood as well. Thank you. So thank you, members. We'll now proceed to agenda item. So do any members have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other registrable interest, or non-registrable interests that they wish to declare this evening? And if so, please indicate and state the item and the nature of your interest. Okay, as there are no declarations this evening, we will now proceed to agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. So we're asked to approve the minutes of the full council meeting held on the 27th of October 2025, which have been circulated to members and published on the council's website. Please can I have a proposer to approve the minutes as an accurate record? Thank you, Councillor Butland. And can I please have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. So the minutes have been moved and seconded as an accurate record. All those in favour, please indicate. All those against, please indicate. And any abstentions? Thank you, members. The minutes are approved. I'll now sign the minutes. So we'll now proceed to agenda item 5, public question time. We have no registered speakers this evening, so I'll proceed to agenda item, I'll now proceed to agenda item 5, the announcements and statements from the chairman and also the leader of the council. So since our last meeting of full council, I've had the privilege of attending 12 events across the district, each one a testament to the strength, creativity and compassion of all of our communities. The Braintree District Volunteer and Active Braintree Awards recognised extraordinary dedication of volunteers and organisations who give their time selflessly. Volunteering is the backbone of our district and it sustains local charities, enriches community life and ensures that vital services reach those who need them most. These awards were a very special evening and they were a powerful reminder that the spirit of service is alive and thriving across the Braintree District. I was fortunate to be invited alongside our Vice Chairman to the unveiling of a plaque to commemorate Mary G in Earlscombe. This was a very moving occasion, also joined by the Lord Lieutenant of Essex, showing and honouring local heritage and individuals who once shaped our community. I attended the Age Welfare in Witham, which supported older residents with advice, services and opportunities to stay active but also connected. I attended 2 events regarding remembrance, one in Tabor Academy, and I have to say they did a sterling job of honouring those servicemen, but also the Braintree Remembrance Service. Both of these were deeply poignant, and we must remember that remembrance is not only about honouring the fallen, but also about teaching future generations the value of sacrifice, resilience and peace. These events brought together people of all ages and that were shared with gratitude and respect. I've been fortunate to be invited to many business briefings over my time as chairman, and I attended one in another event in Earlscombe at Combe Valley Golf Course, a business briefing with HR Prime, where local businesses came together to talk about the importance of HR and legal advice, which was brilliant to see. Another event was the Midlife Employment, Skills and Health Fair for those residents, helping to gain access to opportunities at the ages between 45 and 60, maybe needing to redesign their career, having an opportunity to get back into work if they needed to. I was honoured to attend the Alec Hunter Academy presentation evening, looking at the successes, actual record-breaking cohorts of 2025. And these were the pupils that joined Alec Hunter, if we remember, during the pandemic. So most their first academic year, moving into year 7, was in COVID bubbles, and they actually managed to break records at the school. So it just goes to show what can be done. I attended an event with our leader, Councillor Butland, at Vacay Luxury Travel, where both myself and the leader donated Christmas toys for Homestar Essex, which was a great initiative set up to be able to give disadvantaged children a present at Christmas time. A highlight for myself just this week was revisiting Housestead for their incredible torchlight procession. I was just talking prior to resident association members about what a fantastic evening that was, and I was delighted to see that local businesses thrived on the evening as well, with one business actually taking an additional £2,000 in revenue. So it just goes to show what these community events. But this was the 52nd torchlight procession, and I would urgently ask members, if you get the opportunity to go and visit, it's an incredible event, and those volunteers make that the event that it has been. And just today, I was out and about across our district, as far and wide as Bures, to Witham and Housestead. I'm in Braintree again tomorrow, and we were honouring those Christmas window display competitions, giving out prizes for those businesses that have made their business look ever so festive as we approach the Christmas period. So delighted to be able to go out and about and see many opportunities, different volunteers, business leaders across our district, and I look forward to attending many more in the months to come. However, finally, I have the pleasure of congratulating Housestead Town Council, who have gained the Local Council Gold Award for the second time, and is now one of only 50 councils out of some 10,000 to do so. The Local Council Award Scheme is designed to celebrate the successes of the very best local councils, offering councils the opportunity to show that they meet standards set by the sector, which are assessed by their peers. The prestigious Gold Award signifies that a council stands at the pinnacle of best practices, attaining excellence in governance, community leadership and council development, and are distinguished by their forward-thinking approach. On behalf of this council, I would like to congratulate Housestead Town Council on their achievements. So on behalf, I would now like to invite Councillor Graham Butland to make his announcements. I also understand Councillor Butland will be inviting questions for members following his announcements, and I will ask for an indication of speakers after Councillor Butland has made his announcement. So over to you, Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you very much for granting me a little extra time for what I think is an important announcement regarding devolution and local government reorganisation, and also for allowing any members of the Council who may have any questions that I may be able to answer to be able to put them. So, Chairman, members will have seen the Government's announcement last week that they have decided to delay the Greater Essex mayoral elections from May 2026 to May 2028. Whilst the detailed implications of this decision are still to be worked through, both at a national government level and in Greater Essex, Government has been clear that devolution is still happening in Essex. It is also clear that it does not indicate a delay in local government reorganisation. I am keen, therefore, to update members on what we know at present. As was shared with members last week, a written ministerial statement was published and delivered in the House last Thursday morning. Through his statement, the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government suggested that mayoral strategic authorities are most successful when, and I quote, built on a strong history of partnership and joint delivery, close quote. The Secretary of State also suggested that the government is keen to allow for local government reorganisation to be completed before mayors are elected, recognising that devolution is strongest when it is built on strong foundations. This would appear, therefore, to be the government's reasoning for delaying the mayoral elections. The government has confirmed that whilst the election of a mayor has been delayed, the Greater Essex Combined County Authority, the GECCA, will still be created next year. Devolution of responsibilities in the areas of transport and infrastructure, skills and employment, planning for housing, economic development and regeneration, environment and net zero, health and well-being, public sector reform and public safety will therefore still happen next year. Whilst it is likely that the powers, responsibilities and funding relating to these functions will now be lesser in the first 2 years of the GECCA, given it will initially be without a mayor, we expect the combined authority and devolution more generally to have a powerful and influential impact on Greater Essex. The statutory instrument, which will provide the legislative basis for establishing the combined authority and was expected to be published in November, has not yet been released by government. We therefore hope and expect more detail will be offered soon by the government on exactly what powers and responsibilities will be available to the combined authority when it is established next year. And I am aware that leaders of the upper tier authorities, not just in Essex but in the other areas concerned, are meeting with ministers on Thursday of this week. Alongside the announcement of the delayed election, the government has confirmed the allocation of investment funding that will be made available to the Greater Essex Combined Authority. The annual allocation which will be made when the Combined Council becomes a full mayoral strategic authority in 2028 will be £41.5 million. For the first 2 years of the Combined Authority in 26-27 and 27-28, the allocation will be 1/3 of that at £13.8 million. The allocation of this funding, which will be additional to any relevant government departmental funding that will be devolved to the Combined Authority, shows how it is important it will be that we engage as fully and persuasively as we can with the new strategic authority as it begins its work. To that end, our Chief Executive and I met with other Essex leaders and Chief Executives of Essex authorities on Friday and discussed how districts will be represented on the Combined Authority when it is formally constituted next year. It has been agreed that the 12 districts of Essex will be represented or allocated 2 district seats on the board. These will be non-voting members of the Strategic Authority and will sit alongside the current upper tier authorities of Essex, Southend and Thurrock. Monitoring officers are working together now to establish the best governance route to nominate representatives to those 2 district seats. We will want to work positively with all voting and non-voting members of the Strategic Authority to ensure that the needs of Braintree communities and businesses are well represented and reflected in the Combined Authority's developing plans. We therefore await, Chairman, further information from Government and the current upper tier authorities in Essex as to how the Combined Authority will be formed, and I will provide any update to members as and when I receive them, including the agreed mechanism for nominating district non-constituent members. As I've already said, last week's news about devolution does not signify any change in the progress towards local government reorganisation. At Friday's meeting of the Essex leaders and chief execs, Teresa Grant, our LGR sector advisor, explained that in her opinion, Greater Essex is ahead of other places on the devolution priority programme in terms of our readiness for LGR. She complemented the work led by our chief executives to ensure LGR work streams are being set up and delivered effectively ahead of the government's minded to decision, which is anticipated to be in March. We received a presentation on the procurement work stream, which is co-sponsored by Nicole Wood, the Chief Executive of Essex County Council, and our own Chief Executive, Dan Gascoigne. Excellent progress has been made, led by the Essex Procurement Partnership and building on many years of joint procurement activity. Members will recognise the importance of this procurement because all organisations will have contracts which will be coming up for renegotiation, etc., with third parties. So we do need to ensure that we have a full plan as to how that will be handled. Senior civil servants from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government were also in attendance at that meeting and keen to emphasise the government's commitment to delivering on LGR. Members will be aware that the statutory consultation on the 4 LGR proposals from Greater Essex runs until January, and I will share our consultation response with all our councillors for information shortly. The consultation will close on the 11th of January, after which we anticipate the government contacting Greater Essex authorities to engage in the content of the Draft Strategic Changes Order, SCO. This is the legislation that will underpin LGR and the means by which the government set out the means by which the government will dissolve the existing 15 councils, establish the new unitary authorities and provide for the 2027 election to shadow councils and set out the traditional transitional arrangements. So, Chairman, there remains much work to be done, and I will continue to keep members informed at every stage of the journey. I'm grateful to our officers who remain absolutely focused on delivering the best possible services for our residents through this significant and complex programme of change. We must not forget that the delivery of services on a day-to-day basis is as essential as local government reorganisation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butland, for that very detailed update this evening. So, members, does anybody have a question regarding the update on local government reorganisation and devolution? Please indicate by showing your hands. Thank you. Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Chairman, and nothing too much to add to the leader's statement, other than to say thank you for that and for early sight of that as well, to allow us to get our heads around the changes that are going on. Just sort of looking at things over the weekend, it reminded me of the statement that I listened to when Angela Rayner made her statement about Greater Essex, and she just said, you've got to be prepared for this to be messy. And I think it just feels now, this is the mess. But actually, we were pre-warned about that. This isn't easy. And all along, it has been said that Greater Essex is complex. So I do appreciate that we're getting as much detail as possible. I am slightly nervous about LGR because if we've got this information on the combined authority, it sort of makes you a bit nervous that we could get more to come down for us on LGR. So really mindful of that. I appreciate that, of course, we need to be looking at contracts and ways of working together as a Greater Essex system. But I go back to points that I've previously made about the governance and the democracy and the democratic process to allow people to come out and vote and, you know, and get the right setup in place. I think it is as important, and I will keep sort of pushing for that, because I think it is so important that we really communicate this out to our communities so that everybody fully understands what's going on, because I don't know what it feels like for members in their wards, but I certainly get a lot of it in my ward about when are we going to have the next elections, what elections are there, are you know, people are generally confused, and sometimes I think so much information goes out I think just some very clear timelines coming from this authority to our communities to explain exactly what's going on for the democratic process. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Butland.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Beavis. I mean, my understanding is no greater than anyone else at the moment. The government have said that the postponed county council elections from 2025 will go ahead in 2026. Although when I watched the parliamentary special special question in Parliament, the Minister then went on to say, but. So the door is possibly still there. But do bear in mind, it's not just Greater Essex on this, it is the other five areas, including Norfolk and Suffolk and parts of Suffolk, Sussex and Hampshire as well that are included. Yes, I think the postponement of the mayoral elections was a surprise to everyone. I don't think any of us were expecting that. And as regards to, you know, if a constituent asks you, well, what elections are we having? Wait till the notices of election go up, I think is basically the only advice one can offer at this moment. Although, no, that's not quite true. Once the statutory order is down, we will have the details then. So it's likely to be early in the new year. But at the moment, the postponed county council elections will go ahead, and will go ahead on the new boundaries, which the Boundary Commission determined just 18 months, 2 years ago. Okay?
Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'll be very brief about comment, and it does seem a bit of a shambles, and I'm wondering whether the mayor is now the cart or the horse. Because we started off saying we had to have a mayor first, now we're going to have a mayor second, so it's all a bit strange. Really similar to what Councillor Beavis raised around timetable, we've now had elections council twice. And my understanding is what the Minister actually said was that he was minded to, perhaps you could clarify that, minded to cancel to postpone the mayoral elections for 2 years. So is it actually a firm decision? That was my first question. My second question is, he said in his statement that Braintree communities and businesses will be well represented. But if BDC has no direct seat on the GECA board, how will we be represented?
Right, good point about whether the mayor's are the cart or the horse. I leave individual members, Chairman, to determine that. On the issue about involvement of businesses, etc., on the non-voting members of the combined authority will include the business community, further education and university parts, the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, who again is, you know, what is going to happen to that? The Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, I think, was expecting no longer to exist this time, well, certainly in May 2026. Will that continue on through to 2028? I haven't got an answer. I've got as many questions as colleagues around the chamber will have on that. Sorry, there was a question in the middle, Councillor Abbott. I think I missed the second question, was it you said?
I said that my understanding was that the decision to delay the mayoral elections was a minded-to decision. Does that mean it could be reversed and we get a third change to the election timetable?
I think everything seems to be a minded-to at this moment. I would be surprised, well, I would be as surprised as I was when the mayoral elections were cancelled if they were then brought back. However, there are rumours, and they're no more than rumours, that might be brought back to May 27. But I know no more than, you know, anyone else has read, etc. We will just have to wait until the early part of next year, January, February, well, probably February, March time, before we know definitively what is happening. And as I say, it will not only be what is happening in Greater Essex, but in those other areas such as Norfolk and Suffolk.
Thank you. Councillor Staines.
you, Chair. It seems that Essex's dash to devolution is putting its residents at the bleeding edge of transformation without having secured anything extra or special from UK government, especially in terms of the A12 or A120 infrastructure funding, insufficient transformation contribution, and addressing the critical issues with the prescribed GECA governance model by the all-knowing MHCLG, let alone debt write-off and send funding security. So, question, is now a good time for Essex to be minded to withdraw from the priority process before the statutory instrument is passed and use the time, freed up resources and closer local cross-authority relationships to try and secure some meaningful advantages from UK government before restarting Project Greater Essex? This process feels like MHCLG wants to buy us one of those magazines where you pay nothing for the initial edition that includes the first part of an intricate model, but then leaves Essex residents to buy all the other bits needed to complete it. But just like the TV ads selling these models, this government process is not clear how many instalments are needed, the normal price per bit, how long it will take to finish, or what it will end up costing us to complete. So after withdrawal, an aim of a more recently elected team at upper and lower authority levels could be to rejoin a fully funded, tried and tested, combined authority formation process, but only after a meaningful period of negotiation to secure better terms than the current one-size-fits-all per capita rate offered last week from MHCLG. Thank you.
Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Chairman. I do love the snappy questions that Councillor Staines puts forward. And to say, I'm really here, I suppose, defending the government. To say that nothing has come out, I did mention, perhaps he missed it, £41.5 million additional comes into Essex with the full mayoral situation, when the full mayoral combined authority is in being. And for the first 2 years, where, if you like, it would be at a level 2, when we were talking about levels of devolution, we're talking about an additional 13.8 million. So to say nothing is coming in, well, wrong. Yes, thank you, Councillor Finkin, it's wrong. And not for the first time, I have to say, from the colleague opposite. Yeah. No, I do not think Essex should withdraw any more than, I think this is the way things are going. Yes, I'd like to be there quicker, certainly, and I think even colleagues across the political spectrum, not just in this chamber, but wider afield, would like to see that go quicker and faster. I thought the statement by the previous Minister, Minister McMahon, in the House of Commons was a good indication that he also felt that the postponement of the mayoral elections was wrong. But the government is the government, and the current ministers are the current ministers, and they have the authority to make those decisions. Our role is to push as hard as we can for what we think is the right thing to happen, and that is what we are doing, and we are working very closely, I think all districts, working very closely with the three upper tier authorities, Essex, Southend and Thurrock, to put the point for the whole of Essex as strongly as we can.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. And Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you. I hadn't really planned to say anything, but there's a different way, I suppose, of looking at it. That we want it to be right. And if it means we have to take a bit longer to get it right, then it's worth doing. And I hope that what I'm saying is going to fulfil itself. But I hope that by putting it off, delaying it, will mean that we actually do get it right. It's a huge change to local government, as we know, bigger than anything that we saw 50 years ago, and that was a huge change. So we need to get it right. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it will happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to Councillor Jeffries for that. I think, as I said, I think that's the government's reasoning for it. Some critics have said, well, we might have a change of minister, but we had the same advisors who were advising the previous ministers to go ahead just a few months ago and now being told, no, 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 don't go ahead. What happens in Whitehall behind closed doors, I am not privy to.
Okay, thank you, members. We'll now proceed to agenda item 6, motion by Councillor Spray. So, following the publication of the report as set out on pages 5 to 6 of tonight's agenda, an amendment was received in accordance with the Council's procedural rules. Councillor Spray and Councillor Tom Cunningham, as the proposer and seconder of the original motion, were consulted and have consented to the amendment. As a consequence of this acceptance, the amended motion is now the substantive motion to be considered this evening. The addendum report setting out the amended motion was published and circulated to all members on Thursday the 4th of December, and we will be referring to the amended motion report for tonight's debate. Councillor Spray and Councillor Cunningham, the proposer and seconder of the motion, are both present this evening, so this motion may now proceed. Councillor Spray, please can you formally move your motion, and please can I remind you that before you make any speech on your motion, it must be seconded.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm pleased to bring forward this motion on government policy over large planning sites, and I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. And Councillor Cunningham, as you were recorded as the seconder, would you be able to second this evening?
Mr Chairman, happy to second, formally second and reserve right to speak.
Thank you very much. So, members, the motion has been formally moved and seconded. I will now invite Councillor Spray to make her speech.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good evening, members. What we have here, Chairman and members, is yet another government proposal to change the planning system in order, according to their way of thinking, to speed up the delivery of new homes and thereby achieve their target of 1.3 million new dwellings by the end of this Parliament. Because, as the government sees it, the current system is too slow, too cumbersome, too complicated, too hung up on trying to obtain background information to support every application, and therefore it acts as a block on approving applications and building. Now, I'm not suggesting, Chairman, that the current planning system we have is perfect, or that it doesn't bear a review sometimes with the aim of improving what we have in place. And certainly changes that would support planning officers in their roles and planning committees in their decision making would be welcome. However, what we have right now feels like every week something different. It's hard to keep up, and it's harder still to see how some of these proposals will make a positive difference. Turning to the crux of the motion, the proposal is that where large developments of over 150 dwellings are to be refused, the application should be called into the Secretary of State for a decision. Now, technically, large is the correct term for developments of over 150 dwellings. For many of the smaller villages in this district, 150 new homes would be significant. But if you look at development that's taken place around this district in our larger villages, in the key service villages, and certainly in our 3 towns, 150 is actually a very low bar to be judged by. How is this referral system going to work? I imagine that applications will be sent to the Planning Inspectorate to examine. Now, that body currently deals with appeals against refusals, and that means everything from a small extension to the back of your neighbour's house to some very large solar applications. Inspectors are also appointed to oversee NSIP examinations. There are quite a lot of these going on, and they are extremely complex and time-consuming. Those of us involved in planning are painfully aware that the Inspectorate are now under considerable strain and under-resourced. So how are they going to cope with the additional workload? Equally worrying is that because of this, this is likely to become an automatic process, and in the interests of build faster, could well become a generic rubber stamping exercise that bypasses local democracy and goes straight to Westminster for decision. Last Friday, the chair of the Planning Committee, Councillor Parker, and I met with Braintree MP Sir James Cleverly who is the Shadow of Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. We met him here in Causeway House. He is as concerned as we are about the removal of local decision making, and he made a very good point. Why would a developer, especially the bigger companies, bother to come in with applications of less than 150 homes? Much more straightforward to apply for over 150, in the knowledge that your application will either be approved because it is suitable and complies with planning policies, or, if refused, it'll be whizzed up to Westminster and waved through. So this process will favour the big boys and squeeze the small companies who are already under considerable strain. It will incentivise disengagement with the local planning process and in all probability lead to speculative applications. Instead of piling the pressure onto already hard-pressed planning officers and diligent members of planning committees, not to mention local ward members who will have to explain to exasperated parish councils and residents why their elected council can't make planning decisions and do the right thing for the area they represent. Instead of that, why not tackle one of the real blockers to building? Developers who don't get on and build when they've been given planning permission. Why not tackle the problem of the around 1 million homes standing empty throughout the country? We know that sometimes these things happen for a particular reason. They may be awaiting probate, there may be a family issue, an owner may be overseas, but that doesn't apply to all 1 million. Make it easier for local authorities to take on those properties and provide much needed housing for families. It will go a long way towards making that target of 1.3 million. The block isn't with local authorities, certainly not this one. Braintree District has a consistently good record of processing and determining planning applications on time. So, Chairman, members, the problem isn't with us, and this proposal isn't the solution, and I look forward to your support for the motion this evening. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. Do any members wish to speak on this motion? Please can I remind members that their speeches must be directed to the motion under discussion, and I'll start with Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I just respectively point out that it was myself and Councillor Beavers who proposed the amendment. You didn't mention that. And we very much welcome the acceptance of the ING Group amendment, which we feel strengthens the wording of the motion. The Labour government is clearly obsessed both with a false narrative that the planning system is held up by human blockers, but a more perverse and troubling narrative that species such as bats, newts and even snails are halting development. As the Cabinet member has said, we know in Braintree District that is nonsense, and Braintree District Council is meeting its planning targets, it's developing its review of its local plan, and despite the fact that there are some very hard to meet challenging targets. And we currently have, over the last few years, historically high build-out rates of over 1,000 houses a year. So when the Prime Minister talks about the answer can't always be no, and all this stuff about blockers and snails and bats, I just wonder if he and his ministers have even been to Essex recently and seen all the development sites around local villages and towns. This proposal to take away decision-making over 150 houses is anti-democratic, and it further reduces elected councillors' ability to have input into the planning system in terms of decision-making. As I'm sure most members know, well over 90% of planning applications are already delegated to officers, so this would be another tranche of applications which councillors potentially would not be deciding. It is also troubling given that recently the government appeal decisions have tilted dramatically in favour of developers. The government is granting far more applications that go to appeal. So as the Cabinet member said, the worry is, and even on sites which are not in local plans, the worry is that even if one of these sites or several of them came in that weren't in the local plan, They go up the road to London and just get granted. I watched a video, a recent video of the Secretary of State saying that the government wants more, and I quote, more decision making done by communities, not to communities. Well, it's like Orwellian language. It's the other way round what he's doing. More government decisions also means greater risk of not securing those vital local services we talk about that are already not keeping up with the pace of development. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I strongly support this council in this council's submission to the Secretary of State that it references the fact that developers need to build out the consents they already have planning permission for. As the Cabinet member rightly said, and it's actually even more crazy than she said, something like 1 million planning permissions are sitting waiting to be built out. Something over 1 million houses are lying empty, and over 1 million, the estimate is that over 1 million buildings could be adapted for housing use or repurposed in other ways to bring partial housing use. So those are the areas the government should be concentrating on, not endlessly changing the planning system, which is not the problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbots. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Chair. I shall be voting in favour of the amended motion this evening. I'd like to associate myself with the comments that Councillor Spray made about how fantastic this council is at building homes. We hit our planning targets, we do our bit to make sure that the next generation will eventually be able to afford their own home. Not everyone, not every council is as good as we are, and I fully support the principle of getting councils to build more homes where they aren't doing so. I think this is clearly, however, the wrong way of the government is going about this, completely the wrong way. Now, I know colleagues are going to speak about the various, the democratic basis for this and whether or not we are undermining the very foundations of local government by taking away the power to turn down planning applications. I'd instead like to comment on something from my own ward. So to add some further numbers to what Councillor Abbott was saying, it's an IPPR report from earlier this year. 1.4 million homes have received planning permission since 2007 and have got unbuilt. This has happened right here in Braintree, on the land west of Panfield Lane. In 2019, this council gave planning permission to roughly 800 homes on that site, as well as a fantastic link road that is going to, my goodness, when that gets built, it's nirvana. We're not going to have any more traffic jams in Braintree, I hope. But they've had planning permission since 2019. Not a single home has been built on that site. We haven't had groundbreaking on that link road. It is so frustrating. Hours and hours of officer time spent trying to get this moving along. If the government was really keen to do something about this problem, they would introduce a legal duty on developers to force them, when they get planning permission, to build on that site within a certain time frame or risk losing that planning permission. I think the government's proposal is totally the wrong way of going about increasing the number of homes that are built in our country. And I wish they'd listen to some of the ideas coming from this chamber this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Mason. Sorry, Councillor Mason, could we just make sure your microphone's switched on, if possible, please?
There you go. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. Apologies for that. So yes, I would go with part of that motion if we were
solely looking at the developers and looking at the delays in development and looking at the infrastructures, perhaps you're just taking into account the A12, the A120, the fact that nothing has been done there. And I would just like to suggest, I won't be supporting the motion, but I would like to suggest that perhaps if the council had voted more favourably in previous years, supporting things like the Garden Village proposals, then there would be no requirement for the current motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman. I do support the amended motion in full for a few reasons. If refusing all developments over 150 homes had to go to the Secretary of State, the system would jam up. It would be completely blocked, as Councillor Spray said earlier on. We wouldn't have an increase in inspectors. Secondly, I mean, new houses are needed in the right place, but local government democracy and council involvement is surely important to build better community support and to secure the right levels of infrastructure. Finally, I do support asking the Secretary of State to get developers to actually use their planning consents as opposed to land banking. And I wonder, in fact, if some consideration should be given to penalties for those who don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Prime.
Thank you, Chair. I too will be supporting the motion tonight. My thing is the Secretary of State is now stating everything goes to him, anything over 150. We know planning departments struggle to retain and recruit officers to do the planning. He's now stating in his letters that he hopes to have 1,400 more inspectors by the end of this Parliament. My question is, where are they coming from? It takes 3 years for a university degree before you even start looking at planning. Where are they coming from? Are they sitting in Wethersfield? Are they going to be the other sides of the doctors and the engineers? Nobody's saying where these are coming from. It's going to be a minefield. It is really going to be difficult to get anything built in the future by this government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prime. Councillor Finken.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we need to put the proposals into some sort of context. Our government has set an ambitious target of building 1.5 million homes during this Parliament. It's generally agreed that this will not be achieved without reforms to the planning system. Apart from the obvious benefits to people of providing more homes, especially social and affordable housing, this fulfills one of our most important priorities, to promote economic growth. These plans will generate £330 billion in overall economic activity over the course of this Parliament, which will help us to fund our public services and improve living standards. The plans will also boost employment opportunities. It's been estimated that an extra 350,000 jobs a year will be created in conjunction with our Labour government's ambitious plans for increasing training and apprenticeships in the construction industry. Even right-wing and conservative think tanks and commentators agree that the housing target will only be achieved through reform of the planning system. The changes in planning rules are not specifically directed at councils like Braintree, which have been very responsible in attempting to meet government targets for housing. Other councils, however, have blocked or delayed larger developments. This puts greater pressure on councils like Braintree to contribute to the achievement of the government targets. The Secretary of State is particularly concerned about councils which routinely reject planning applications which have been recommended for approval by planning officers. And although the council will be required to refer developments of over 150 homes to the MHCLG, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will be called in. And if they are, they will still have to be assessed by the planning inspector to see whether or not they are approved. Like other members, I agree with the point in the motion about the problems created by developers who gain planning permission and fail to build the houses within a reasonable timescale. But as the main thrust of the motion is to oppose the government's reforms, I will be opposing the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Finken. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'd like to start by suggesting that the vast majority of what Councillor Finken just said may well be true. And yet, that doesn't mean that logically this is the right way to achieve that. And I want to go ahead and explain to this council why. This is a proposal for centralisation at a time when the country is supposed, at the government's direction, to be localising decision-making through devolution. The proposal therefore runs counter to the government's own core policy direction. Such a change might be made in the false hope of delivering more roofs, but the lives under those roofs would probably be poorer than those delivered by successful local planning authorities such as Braintree, a district that, like many others, delivers the number of new homes government demands under the current system. The government's centralisation proposal is unfair because it would penalise successful authorities who endeavour to deliver up-to-date local plans, and all because some authorities fail to make the effort to keep their local development plan up to date, or they fail to grant consent to developments on already allocated sites. It would be better for government to take control of those specific LPAs that fail in this way, rather than embarking on an unwise, broader centralising reform of the planning system. Making everyone pay the price for the few that transgress or fail is plainly unfair. Local decision-making based on local collaboration, together with effective pre-application process and trained, well-informed planning committee members who attend site-specific planning fora, as is practised by BDC, should, in my view, be made the norm across planning authorities. Maybe central government should attempt this in order to speed informed decision-making that delivers better outcomes for future residents. Mr. Chairman, this proposal runs counter to government's own policy position on supporting local development of small sites by small local developers. There is a widespread perception, and others have already alluded to this, that centralised consenting process will be more of a nod-through rather than a properly considered process. As a result, government's proposal would lead to developers increasing site sizes, as has already been suggested, to ensure they go through central government and PINs rather than through an informed local process, the response to the local situation. This again indicates government inconsistency in policy making. Members, it is difficult to see how the organisational upheaval, such as centralisation of this decision making, would deliver doing anything other than delaying decision making, thus making the delivery of government's housing targets within this Parliament wholly impossible. I want to explain why that is. Our nation is short of planning officers already, and you cannot train and provide essential working experience. It's not just giving somebody a degree that's needed for this. in short timescales. The numbers of new trainees being spoken of currently would be something of the order of 1,000 short of what would be needed to make this happen. and in terms of centralised decision making, plundering the LPAs would render them less competent and still not cover the shortfall. And the tendency I see is that when development is consented centrally, and I do end up having to look at this, is that too much of the detail is left to be cleared up locally as an afterthought. We see this with NSIPs, and there is no reason to believe that centrally consented large housing development would be any different. The remaining planning officers at local level would be left to clear up the mess, hampered by being short-staffed and awash with the resultant conflict and dispute. Chairman, government's proposal to centralise the consenting process in this way for larger housing developments is a profoundly unwise sledgehammer to crack a nut. It could not result in the increased housing delivery because of the flaws I've just outlined. They could not staff it, nor facilitate the change fast enough to deliver the outcome they seek within this Parliament. If, as has already pointed out, government wants to deliver more homes, it needs to tackle developers who fail to build out consented sites in a timely manner. And government needs to focus on those local planning authorities who fail to plan or refuse to deliver the houses that are needed. That is why I can characterise their proposed centralisation of this decision on large housing developments as unwise, inconsistent and unfair. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hollands. Councillor Abraham.
Thank you, Chair. What I'd like to say to all the members of the Chamber, I'm very impressed by the debate, the strength of feeling that is out there, how much time they may have spent studying the subject and the conclusions that they've come to. But when I look across at all the members here, all worthy and doing their job, I always remember going back to when I was a boy, and one thing that stuck in my mind, I read a book, and a lot of you probably have read the book, and the cry was, one for all and all for one. And as long as we remember this, when we're making our discussions and coming to our conclusions, we shall get and achieve our objective. So I'll put it in your minds now. One for all and all for one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Abraham. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will keep my speech brief, but I find myself agreeing with many points that has come across from both sides of the chamber. In this, what I see the non-politically motivated from an LPA's perspective response to what I think is a totally unnecessary response from government. Just to reiterate a couple of points that have already been made. From a sustainable housing delivery, we have an adopted local plan that we deliver on year after year to meet our housing target numbers. And included in that is our affordable and shared housing numbers too. What will happen to that if we have to pass that up to 150 houses to a centralised government department? Completely agree with the fact that we approve all of these applications, but house builders have to build them out. It's totally and wholly unfair that we meet our targets on approvals for housing numbers only to be penalised by those house builders that fail to build those houses out. And it's wholly unfair to tar us with the same brush of those incompetent LPAs who do not do that. And you don't have to go far across Essex to find a few of those who don't do that. So my alternate to this is that they should be focusing on those particular LPAs who are not doing their duty in delivering their housing numbers, not tarring every single LPA with the same brush and putting us in that bracket. And then lastly, Mr. Chairman, for those of you who have tuned in or are part of the local planning subcommittee, you will know that we can objectively assess our strategic housing need, and we do that across the chamber with objectivity, with local councillors, with local knowledge, making local decisions on large housing numbers to be put into that local plan. We are more than competent in doing that. We have always been competent in doing that, and we see absolutely no need in having to take this approach that's been given to us by central government. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Hooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wholeheartedly support this motion. It is vital, as a District Council, we retain the ability to refuse large planning applications when we believe they are inappropriate or inconsistent with our own local plan, without those decisions being automatically pushed to the Secretary of State. As someone relatively new on the Planning Committee, I have already seen how seriously members take their responsibilities. We assess applications on their merits, we know our district, and we understand our neighbourhoods better than anyone. The idea that major applications can be referred to the Secretary of State, someone who does not know our area or the local issues, feels, quite frankly, misguided and undermines the local accountability. In recent years, in my capacity as a parish councillor, I have helped Rain fight no fewer than 3 speculative developments in or around the ward. All went to appeal, and one was even called in by the Secretary of State. With the village and the parish council supporting BDC at the hearings, We succeeded in having 2 of those appeals upheld. Unfortunately, one did slip through the net. I am sure colleagues have faced similar battles in their own wards, and we should not be subjected to the roulette of a Secretary of State decision being imposed on our communities. All of the proposals that I mentioned were subject to the tilted balance because we could not demonstrate a 5-year housing supply, a situation heavily influenced by a slow build-out rate after permissions had been granted. So I completely agree that we must urge the government to tackle this issue. It is happening time and time again in our own district, as well as across the country, and it continues to place councils and communities at a disadvantage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooks. Councillor Williams.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I was shocked and appalled, to be honest with you, by this particular announcement, and I was immensely surprised by the 150 figure. As Councillor Spray mentioned earlier, that is an astonishingly low threshold when it comes to planning applications. But I have to say, something else did cross my mind when I was reading the coverage about this particular news story, and it's something that we haven't really discussed tonight, but I do think it's something that we need to consider. Considering the government's numerical competence, or lack thereof, is there a chance that they may have missed a 0 off the end of 150? I think it's something that we probably need to consider. But if this is indeed accurate, then I think that this is just an example of a rattled government who knows that they have no real chance of hitting their own targets when it comes to home building. They're splashing around in the deep end, desperately looking for any life raft that might restore some of their reputation. And let's be honest, let's say it how it is. This would be a hammer blow to local democracy. And all it does is confirm something that we all know, which is that this government prizes mandarins and ministers in London over council leaders and councillors in the areas that they know, love and represent. And you do have to ask, don't you? You do have to ask, if this happens, what is the point of local planning? What's the point of it at all? And actually, never mind about local planning, what it is now, what's the point of LGR? Because let's not forget what this government has said about LGR. Jim McMahon has said that LGR, this programme of reform, will give elected councillors far more power to take decisions in their area. Alison McGovern, the current local government minister, don't know how long she'll be there, she says our vision is clear. Stronger local councils, empowered across local services, equipped to drive economic growth, improve public services and empower their communities. Well, amen to that, but don't those words ring hollow? And isn't it the most staggering incoherence that you have a government on the one hand waxing lyrical about putting rocket boosters under local decision making and empowering councillors and councils, whilst at the same time taking away the very basic responsibilities that those councils currently have. It simply makes no sense, and frankly, it smacks of panic. So I will enthusiastically back the motion tonight, and I would urge any other councillor who genuinely believes in the power of councils, of local democracy and local government to do exactly the same.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Jeffress.
Chair, rather than prolong the discussion, I don't think I can add anything to my colleagues, to what my colleagues, Councillor Finken and Councillor Mason, have said. I totally agree with everything they have said this evening, and all of that was actually in my speech, so I'm quite happy to just go along with them.
Thank you. Councillor Billy Taylor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think it's improper for anyone to misunderstand market conditions. I think on a scheme of over 150 homes, a developer might spend around £1 million taking that through the planning process. And I think members should be mindful that if a developer does achieve a planning permission and that permission isn't implemented, then that expires after a certain period of time. They'd have to go back to the drawing board and seek another planning permission. I think that needs to be said. Also, I think we need to be mindful of market conditions. In May, according to the Land Registry, just 19 homes in London changed hands. So we've seen that market conditions have demoralised the housing market, particularly in sales. So although developers are getting planning and do intend to build, people aren't necessarily buying them, and developers won't build houses unless people buy them. Like I say, the upfront cost of those is astronomically high. So I think they are a couple of considerations. I think we need to obtain more information from the government as to what they mean. The wording, intend to refuse planning permission to developments over 150 homes, will have to inform the government. Well, what do they mean by that? Does that mean an officer recommendation to refuse? Does it mean a committee resolution to refuse a planning application, contrary to the recommendation from officers, or is that both? I think we need to get some more information as to what the government really means by that. I think actually between Councillor Holland and Councillor Finken somewhere is the truth. I think the idea that any application over 150 homes would just be approved by the government is wrong. I think it would go to the planning inspectorate and would be subject to planning rules, including the planning legislation, Town and Country Planning Act, the National Planning Policy Framework. So it wouldn't just be a free-for-all process. And I think if it was, I think Councillor Toby Williams would be absolutely correct. What's the point in having a local plan if the government was to just approve every planning application over 150 homes? That would make it an obsolete and redundant process. I think the other thing I would say as well is that there is a precedent for this. The last Conservative government imposed a very similar situation on Uttlesford District Council next door, an incompetent council that threw out a local plan, didn't have an up-to-date local plan and was refusing applications. The Secretary of State under that Conservative government actually provided an avenue for developers to submit planning applications either to the local planning authority or to the planning inspectorate for consideration. So there is a precedent for this under the last government, and I sense that would probably be the process moving forward. I think also as well, it's worth pointing out, as Councillor Holland referred to, this is probably aimed more at naughty councils. And let's just take Castle Point, for example. They threw out a local plan. Councillor Sheldon, the then leader, presented a local plan that was thrown out by members, and they've produced this independent council's produced a new local plan, and they've only met 53% of its housing target. I mean, that's a joke. That's an incompetent council. Contrast that to Braintree. This is a utopia for planning when you think of it in those terms. We have an up-to-date local plan. We're going through the local plan process. Councillor Hooks has already pointed out that actually, and Councillor Spray often talks about this, we have an excellent record in upholding appeals on those windfall sites that are outside the local plan. So we have a very robust situation. I understand Councillor Hooks talks about the tilted balance point, and that will become a key factor for decision making moving forward. So I think the points I raise, I think there's some nuance to this, and I think we need some further context to this motion, and you can't always capture that context in 100 words. So I think it's been an excellent debate. I fully support the motion, because fundamentally, if the government was minded to approve anything over 150 homes, that would it would undermine democracy, and it would undermine the local plan process. But it is nuanced, as Councillor Finken and I think Councillor Holland talked about. So yes, I do support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Billy Taylor. Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Chairman, and I also will be supporting the substantive motion as amended this evening. When I first looked at the motion, it really did feel, as some members have said this evening, as if it was putting us into special measures without actually being in special measures. And that feels really unfair to us, because we are a council of members and officers that work really hard and do deliver homes. I also agree, it really feels like government interference, and on one hand they're giving us Devo, and then on the other hand we've got this, and again that feels really unfair. I think I just wanted to say as well, it just takes away planning powers on those larger strategic sites away from our councils and communities, particularly at this time of new unitaries and the combined strategic authorities. And I feel sort of quite nervous about that because, you know, it is about our people and our communities and what they want, and this is trying to move it away from them. I just wanted to finally say on the actual motion itself, Councillor Spray speaks about the leader writing to government, and I wondered whether we can actually get sight of that letter as well. And also in the motion about bringing that back to council so that we can actually see what the response to the motion tonight is. But I will be supporting the motion, and thank you to Councillor Spray for bringing that forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beavis. Councillor Bohr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must say that most of the points I wish to raise in support of this motion have been expressed by others very eloquently. I'd just like to add one small point though. The notion of a large planning application going to a government inspector each and every time for determination is rather like a single judge presiding over a trial, a rather important trial. And I follow, because that was my career, I follow planning appeal decisions quite closely. It's a bit of a habit I should break now, but it's fascinating to see how the same problem and the same issue and the same areas of planning law are determined differently by different inspectors. I think it's totally unacceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Bohr. And finally, Councillor Staines.
15 sheets, Graham, don't worry. I support this substantive motion to write directly to the Secretary of State and for locally elected councillors to decide planning applications where appropriate and without refusals being snitched automatically to the Secretary of State, because as many others have said, this hugely dilutes our power to support our communities. Having personally attended multiple planning appeal hearings, the 5-year housing dance between the developer experts and officers is excruciating to witness and highlights the current powerlessness of local authorities to advance the timely build-out of existing permissions. And that was highlighted by Councillor Edwards for Towlands and also Councillor Hooks. Now, with no legal requirement for developers to report delivery statistics even, all these discussions are just opinion, which fuel the burgeoning planning process industry that keeps lots of folks nice and busy in a powerful cocktail of added costs, delay, unpredictability and anxiety. Post-approval, the dread builds in authorities and communities alike that a canny developer will delay, try and remove or just not comply with its planning conditions, whether that's affordable housing percentages, tree planting, that new road or that public transport provision, tucked away in a LIMP 106 agreement developed and often watered down without any community input today at all. Across the UK, interesting stewardship models are being discussed for larger developments, and these aim to address some of these known shortcomings and imbalances. But like many others on the opposite side, I feel another prescribed one-size-fits-all model will spill from MHCLG and land at a village near us very soon. As Councillor Spray so well articulated, the anything over 150 change is the latest of many initiatives which drastically reduce communities' capacity to shape their own places. They include top-down housing targets developed in isolation from local needs, inflated buffers, presumed okay for developments near stations, ignoring road capacity issues, reduced safeguards for ecology, and most worrying of all, and Councillor Holland's vision is very disturbing, what does the future of local planning look like with delivery committees under a unitary authority? So in summary, and I agree with Councillor Spray's wide-ranging assessment of issues and even the digression which the Chair allowed from the 150 element to include many more aspects. So please, can we expand the letter to constructively include all the measures which are detrimental to a local strategic housing process, housing planning process, not just the 150, and seek the support of other Greater Essex authorities with relationship boosted from the LGR process, because we all face these issues, and many also face the additional challenges from larger scale developments of over 1,000 units or bigger still in what were called garden communities or may now be called official or unofficial new towns. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Staines. Councillor Cunningham, having reserved your right to speak, would you like to speak now?
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. The great benefit of reserving your right to speak after a long debate is there's not much in addition you can add to what has been, I think, an excellent debate, some very, very thoughtful contributions from all sides. What I would just say is that whilst this motion has come about out of frustration and concern over the 150 house policy imposition, there is a much deeper seated frustration, which I think we've all collectively share in terms of the frailties of the national planning system, and that is a criticism of successive governments. And we hope for the occasion not too long in the future, when, if it is devolution, if it is local government reform, or if it is a more specific government intervention to unlock the large sites that already have planning and consent, that is badly needed. I think in Braintree, as has been said already, we are well placed and to make observations of this kind and to actually make these points forcefully, because collectively we have always done the hard yards on this. As mentioned, whether it's through the local plan, strategic process, or those who turn up every other Tuesday to do the Development Control Planning Committee, study their work, sweat over the detail, make the difficult decisions. I think there were some excellent contributions in terms of councils that aren't doing, and I totally agree with Councillor Taylor, delighted that authorities such as Castle Point, who probably would actually secretly like this, the bad councils would like this, because thank heavens, dear, we don't have to make a difficult decision, we can bump it upstairs. On completion or on agreement of Castle Point's local plan, that will be the first time since 1997 that they have adopted an up-to-date local plan. I think that predates the birth of some of our members, whether present or not this evening. That is a horrendous dereliction, of responsibility. And as I said earlier, we look forward to meaningful change and unlocking. As a final point, I'd like to thank the Independent and Green group for their amendment. We were delighted to accept, as Councillor Abbott so rightly said, it not only strengthens the message, but it also improved the presentation and the punctuation. For that, personally, very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Spray, firstly, thank you ever so much for bringing a very much well-debated motion around the chamber this evening. In total, including yourself, I believe there's 19 speakers on this, so thank you, members, for giving it the much valued airtime that it's taken. Please can I remind you that you should confine your reply, and bless you, I can see you frantically taking many notes, so to the speeches heard this evening, and try not to introduce any new matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you to colleagues across the chamber for your contributions. It has been, I think, a really excellent debate. A lot to go through. I'll just pick on some of the main points, I think. First, Councillor Abbott, don't disagree actually with anything that Councillor Abbott said. I know that the government is bringing forward, well, proposing a lot of changes which affect the environmental impacts of planning applications, which are causing great concern across all parties. Actually, they do seem to be somewhat fixated on that. And yes, he also mentioned the appeals process, which does seem to be favouring developers. We do a pretty good job in this local authority of defending appeals. We aren't always successful, but often we are. Councillor Edwards, Panfield Lane and the Link Road. Yes, the word frustration doesn't come into it really. There's a lot I can't say, but what I will say is that discussions between officers of this authority, very senior officers, and the two developers concerned have been ongoing for some time. They have moved forward more positively quite recently. I think I can say that. So I am hopeful that we will have some better news for Councillor Edwards, who I know gets an inbox full of emails from his residents, and he's not the only one. So I hope we will have some better news on that before too long. Councillor Mason, I was listening very carefully to everything Councillor Mason said, and then sat up sharply with her last comment, which was, you know, if this council a few years ago had voted in favour of garden villages, we might not be having this discussion this evening. Well, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, and I think I'll just leave it right there. Councillor Walsh, yes, I think you're right, and as I referenced in my statement, referring, you know, which is a low bar number up to the Secretary of State, whoever it is, and I'm assuming it's going to be the Planning Inspectorate who will be delegated to deal with this, it will jam up the system. And it is a much better idea, as far as we're concerned, that developers should receive some sort of penalty for land banking. Both myself and my predecessor in this portfolio, Councillor Bowes-Flint, wrote, I can't tell you how many times, to how many different Secretaries of State saying, please do something about this. And we will continue to make that point. Councillor Prime, yes, where are the additional inspectors coming from? Very good point. They don't grow on trees. They are in quite short supply now, and it takes a lot of training. There isn't just a handbook which says how to be a planning inspector, which you read through and then there you are. It's much more complicated, so I think that's a very good question. Councillor Finken, yeah, I agree with some of what you said. Not all of it. The planning system needs reform. Yes, but it needs to be reform that helps planning officers and helps members of planning committees. And we don't think that this particular reform is the right way to go. Councillor Holland made excellent points. In you know, the main one I picked up on, this diminishes local democracy. We are already short of planning officers. We actually have an excellent team in this authority. We do need to recruit from time to time. We have a good team. They tend to stay with us, but there is a shortage nationally of planning officers, and this is just going to put further pressure on them. Councillor Ritchie referenced our excellent record on meeting our targets, which we do. I know that the second quarter performance report is coming to Cabinet next week, and will show that once again this authority has met and exceeded our targets for determining planning applications, and that's all targets for large, minor and other applications, and this has consistently been the case for a while. So it does seem somewhat unfair to be targeting a good authority like this one. Councillor Hooks, I know that in Rain you fight your patch very hard. I don't necessarily always agree with the stance that the Parish Council takes, but I think mostly you get it right, and I do very much admire the fact that you always put a good argument together at appeals. Certainly I acknowledge that. And I think, sorry Jen, I've just come to page 3. Here we are. Councillor Beavis. Yes, special measures don't apply to us, and they shouldn't do, but it does feel a bit like we're being targeted and rolled in with all the others. When it comes to the leader's letter to the Secretary of State, I think Councillor Butland will certainly be happy for that letter to be circulated to all members so that everyone can see what is said. Councillor Bohr, yeah, I quite agree. The idea that, you know, each referral is going to be treated the same way, well, it isn't. I see all the appeal decisions that come from the Planning Inspectorate. I'm automatically sent them as a portfolio holder. And it is amazing the different way that appeals are treated by different inspectors. What one inspector says is not necessarily what another one says. So the idea that this is going to be standardised in some way, and I'm not sure that's a good thing either, this is a system that just isn't going to work. And Councillor Staines, will we include other measures? Yep, there's a lot going on. There are a lot of proposals. You know, I think we'll have a look at that. I think this letter needs to focus on the 150, because that's what the motion was about. But I'll certainly have a look, and I am certainly concerned about some of the other proposals that are coming from government with the aim of speeding things up, which I don't think they're going to do at all. And finally, my colleague Councillor Tom Cunningham, yes, we do put in the hard yards. We do a great deal of work. The Local Plan Subcommittee absolutely working flat out at the moment with our reviewed local plan, and other authorities are nowhere near matching us or our standard or our progress. So thank you, members, for your contribution. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you ever so much, Councillor Spray. Members, we will now take the vote. All those in favour of the motion, please indicate. All those against the motion, please indicate. And any abstentions? Okay, the motion has been approved. So thank you, members. We'll now deal with agenda item 7, questions to the Leader and Cabinet. Members, during this time, you may only ask one question of the Leader and the Cabinet on matters which relate to their functions, the powers and duties of the Council, or matters pertaining to the district. Questions must be succinct and cannot be asked in parts, and supplementary questions are not permitted. I will allow some explanation if it is absolutely necessary, but I will contain any long lead-in statements. We have 30 minutes for this item. Questions will commence with Councillor Beavis as Leader of the Opposition, and the order of remaining questions will be at my discretion. Please can all members wishing to speak and ask a question this evening now indicate so we can make a list. Please keep your hand raised until it has been acknowledged. Thank you, members. I'll start with Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and my question is for Councillor Gabrielle Spray. And Councillor Spray, I don't expect an answer this evening. I'm more than happy to have a written response to my question, which is about the Sybil Hedingham 106 agreement. And I just want to take you back to 2008, where you might actually recall a Canadian director of a wood company flew over from America to meet me as the chairman of Sybil Hedingham Parish Council to bring forward our largest regeneration site in the village. We think we might have just secured the medical centre being delivered next year. We've now got some artwork on the way, and we've just completed our riverside path. I took a run at the weekend around the site, and I am really concerned now about the uncompleted Section 106 agreements. Myself and Councillor Taylor met with the company Bloor Homes last year. We're no further forward despite lots of conversations and a meeting we've had with them. Financially, there's going to be a lot of cost for Sybil Hedingham Parish Council, which we can bear, but we just feel very much that we weren't involved in the beginning and we're being left alone at the end. So anything you can do to help us would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beavis. Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Beavis. I will provide a written answer to this because I will refer to Section 106 officers for some background information. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. This question is for Councillor Bowers. Since the last meeting of this full council, the Chancellor delivered her budget for 2026. This hiked £26 billion worth of tax rises on working people, savers and students. Would the Cabinet member agree with me that this budget was a national disgrace? And further, will he commit this administration and local Conservatives doing everything we can to reduce the tax burden on local people? Thank you.
Councillor Bowers.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Edwards, for your question. It's quite timely because I remember about a year ago in the budget of the previous year when the council stood up and there was a decision on the national insurance contributions to businesses, and we was told that that would be covered for all public sector organisations in regards directly employed staff. We budgeted for that of £300,000. We put to one side just as a number, and then we was told that we wasn't going to get all the money, and that cost us another £172,000 from our budget last year. So we had that going on. I think with the way we do budgets in this council, and the way we've always done budgets in this council, is we've included every member has the opportunity to participate. We have through that we have a great record in this authority in regard finances and the prudent management across many years. And I think in regards to the question that you ask in regards our communities and our residents, I think every budget and every member in this authority has the feeling that we put the communities and residents at the heart of every decision we make. As opposed to national government, we do not make budget decisions based on the feelings of cabinet members or backbenchers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowers. Councillor Diamond.
Thank you. People in Braintree take real pride in their town and community. I've been contacted by multiple brilliant groups who want to make Braintree look beautiful by planting flowers and other plants around the town, similar to the work that's done by the Town Council in Witham. I have been told that funds have been allocated for this purpose, but not received details beyond this. How much funding has been allocated for planting in Braintree? And importantly, when will these funds be available? Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham.
Mr. Chairman, we work with a number of community groups, not just in the town of Braintree, but across the district, to support their efforts to make our area look better. And yes, we're still having conversations with local community groups regarding taking on the responsibility of planters next year in the town centre to support the work of to support the town centre. I'm very happy to give him and all members more details when they are ready, and I will happily share with all members of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Prime.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Councillor Tom Cunningham. We have a charter that states town centres are cleaned every day, on Saturdays, including Saturdays and Sundays. And parish councils, 4 times a year, they clean all the curbs and the gullyways. Braintree Town is not parished. What is the cleaning regime outside the town centre? I live just outside the town centre. I don't often see the streets cleaned. There was a gentleman in Bocking End walking down the road with a very large vacuum cleaner, picking up leaves and everything else, which was very nice to see. But you can only go so far because the electric cable ain't that long enough. That's my thing. Is there a programme for sweeping the streets outside the town centre?
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you very much. I refer a little bit to the answer I gave a moment ago, but just to give some sort of flavour of what is done outside the town centre. Litter and dog bins emptied 1 to 2 times a week. Fly tips actioned, response to fly tips actioned within 24 hours if they don't require an investigation. Parish sweeping 4 times a year. Verge cutting twice a year. We secured additional money from Essex County Council to do a second cut in our rural areas, and a lot of that work is being done now. Road clearance, 44 street scene partnership agreements with parishes. That's supporting parishes by providing funding for street scene work that is undertaken by the parish's own resources. This includes litter picking and bin emptying and other tidying and street scene work. On top of that, ad hoc work when required. And we ensured in this year's budget there was additional investment in rapid response to team to deal with additional problems. So I think we do a lot of work, either programmed or ad hoc, but we're always looking to find ways of doing more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Traffic. Traffic queues are getting progressively worse at Gullies Corner and Millennium Way roundabouts. We are now seeing long queues all the way back through Tye Green in Crescent. How is it credible to be planning for major development in this area of our local plan? And will the BDC respond to Colchester local plan and draw attention to the several thousand additional houses that are proposed on the A120 at Markstay? Thank you.
Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank Councillor Wright for his question. As he knows, the local plan process is ongoing. There is still much discussion and consultation to be had. Essex County Highways are currently conducting traffic modelling, which will apply in particular to the larger and strategic sites which the local plan subcommittee will discuss, and will then be open for consultation as part of the Regulation 18 process. So there is modelling underway. I don't, by the way, disagree about the queues. We all know about those, but we are awaiting information from County Highways.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. Councillor Van Dolken.
Thank you, Chairman. This question for Councillor Ritchie. Noting the considerable assistance that the Rural England Prosperity Fund has given to our rural areas, such as I represent, can he let us know how well we've done in 2025 in terms of allocating the last of the money of the funds awarded? Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your question, Councillor Van Dolken. I know as a rural representative of your ward, you are keen to understand how well this fund is doing. And actually, as for those of you that might remember, this is the last year of REP funding, and as it's the last year, it's also one of the lowest figures we've been given for the year. But fear not, we have still managed to allocate all of the £176,000 bar about £9,000, which is still left to be allocated. And bearing in mind that we had a real hard deadline to allocate this before the end of the financial year, I'd just like to thank officers and council staff for their fabulous work in getting this allocated. So some strict criteria. So no one who was allocated any funds in the previous year's rounds were allowed to rebid for any of the funds. And at the moment, we're looking at about a 50-50 split between rural businesses and rural communities who have been successful. So just to very briefly run through those. So the rural businesses, and again these might jump out at you if you represent in these wards. We had Wild Dogs Limited, RTH Staircases, King & Co Nursery, Oliver's Plants, French's Farm, JR and EH Knott, B&J Crowther at Tufton Hall, and Orchard Holdings Limited, as well as C&J Blackwell and Sons, helping rural businesses to establish themselves through matched funding for the REPF. And then for the unmatched funding for the community groups, we've had Stystead Parish Council, Alphamstone Village Hall, the Old Schoolrooms Committee in Rain, Coggeshall Community Pool, Lammarsh Village Hall, Montefiore Institute in the Coggeshall Ward, Starter Community Shop, Bradwell and Patterswick Parish Council, Viewers Hamlet Parish Council, and Notley Green Community Association. So we have done an absolutely fantastic job in allocating the last of those funds. As soon as all of those projects have been delivered, the appropriate ward members will be notified, and you will have a chance to either go and visit those sites when they get presented with their plaques acknowledging that they have been in receipt of Rural England Prosperity funding. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your question, Councillor Mendocke.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next year, Silver End will celebrate its centenary since the founding of the Model Garden Village. And following on from Councillor Beavis's question, and in gently saying to Cabinet members this authority does a lot of good, but it doesn't always get things right, we are trying, as part of that centenary, to get some new tree planting done. I think this will be a question for Councillor Spray. So we were asked to identify the projects in the Posey, which we did. I spent some time myself drawing up the individual representations of Posey. That was agreed by Cabinet, I think, in May. We know the Section 106 money is available. Officers have told us it is. We've already used some of it in Rivenall, but we just cannot seem to progress to the next level, which is to get Braintree officers to talk to county officers and vice versa about precise details and locations. We're going to run out of time with this planting season unless we can move it forward soon. We're even offering to plant the trees ourselves if we can just get officer agreement. So could the Cabinet member please assist in making sure this project proceeds? Thank you very much.
Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank Councillor Abbott for his question, but also for giving me some advance notice earlier today of the question, because that has enabled me to obtain some information from officers. The response that came through is quite detailed, so rather than take up Council's time reading it now, I will forward it to Councillor Abbott for his consideration. I think he'll be reasonably pleased with the information that's in there, so I will do that probably tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Chairman. This question is for Councillor Mary Cunningham. I'm very pleased from the updates at the Corporate Scrutiny Committee recently that it looks like the councillor grant scheme is going to be extended for 2 years. As a new councillor, this scheme's allowed me to embed myself better into the local community, seeing what different groups we have there and being able to support them with their needs. I know the grant's highly regarded across the chamber, and in a time where local government gets a bit of a bad rap, could the cabinet member share some of the groups that councillors of all colours have supported this year? Just also while I'm up, I just want to congratulate the Whitton Town ladies, the first team, which they haven't had a team for 20 odd years now, on their first game yesterday on the first team pitch. It was a very good 10-1 win for them. Well done to all the ladies involved, and Simon the coach. Me and Councillor Paul Heath, we enjoyed our day down there, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. Councillor Mary Cunningham.
Thank you, Chairman. Excuse me, and thank you, Councillor Hayes, for your question. Yeah, I too am delighted that we have got the grant for 2 years, and actually an increase over the 2 years of an extra £500, which I'm sure all councillors will find hugely helpful. A flavour of what we have been able to achieve, that actually is quite a long list, and I think I will ask at the end of the year if every member is issued with that list so everybody can see the variety of applications that have come in. I mean, we have covered so many different areas, but if I just tell you, we've been able to support heritage, history, sport, repairs and core funding for key posts, and that's just a flavour of it. And I'll give a couple of examples. I'll give the biggest grant, which was £4,000, which multiple councillors supported, and that was for Sporting 77, and that allowed them to upgrade clubs' changing facilities. The smallest grant was 200, or one of the smallest grants was £200. That was for the Bereavement Cafe in Braintree, which was first set up just a few weeks ago. A lot of it, or a lot of the information had come from the hospice movement. The cafe was set up and they were given some accommodation for several months to get themselves organised, and they wanted to have some refreshments to issue on the, or to give out on the first day to encourage people to join. The success these first few weeks has been overwhelming, that they have now been offered free accommodation by the White Hart for meetings, and it will be free of charge for indefinitely. And the success was possible thanks to the small kickstart funding that councillors supported. And I think that just shows that even the smallest amount can actually, it's almost like from little acorns, oak trees grow. So, you know, there's quite a flavour there. And it's a success story, and I don't think there's one councillor that hasn't felt that they've been really able to support their communities with it. So, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Staines.
Thank you, Chair, and for your help to direct this question. Working with a wide range of community groups to support community cohesion in relation to the use of Wethersfield for emergency asylum reception provision. Our next physical site tour is on the 19th of January, being coordinated by my colleague, Councillor Wendy Taylor. Efforts to spend the Home Office grant money is very tricky and slow, including vital traffic calming measures for Blackmore End and Beasley End, which, while they've been approved some 6 months ago, we're not quite sure when they're going to be delivered. The question is, could we please have an update on the outstanding funds from the Home Office and how it's being spent, please? Thank you.
Councillor Butland, are you happy to take this one?
Yes is the answer to the question.
Thank you. And finally, I have Councillor Toby Williams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to say that I bring glad tidings, because Whittam Public Hall now has a brand new heating system, thanks in no small part to the Community Asset Fund. But I'm led to believe that Whittam, as always, is just the most beautiful bauble on the tree, and that other community assets across the district have also benefited from this trailblazing fund. Can the Cabinet member responsible please set out how these projects are progressing, including the one pertaining to Silver End Village Hall?
Councillor Bowers.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Councillor Williams, for your question. And yes, I'm pleased you've raised, obviously, the completion of the essential upgrades at Whitton Public Hall that happened last month. I need to pay tribute to yourself in regards bringing this to my attention in the initial stage of this quite a while ago now. It just takes time for these things to come to fruition, but it's through the Community Asset Fund, the £330,000 that was invested for the important investments of the new heating and building management system at the venue. The system controls, monitors temperature and energy use, and halts the supply of gas when the fire alarm sounds. And these are really important things, not just from an energy efficient point of view, but obviously from a health and safety point of view. Members who don't know Whitton Public Hall, it's a much loved community venue, regularly hosting a vibrant mix of events including festivals, fairs, comedy nights and tribute bands. So it's a really good venue within our district. In regards, as Councillor Williams has referenced, the Whitton Public Hall was one part of a broader £1.5 million community asset fund that cabinet decision that was made some time ago, and I would like to, through your question, be able to bring members up to date about where we are progressing with the other projects within that fund. The Marks Farm Community Centre, the desired outcome of this project is to replace a boiler plant and building management system controls. The project initiation document has been completed and lodged with procurement for programme tender and specification to be commissioned. The information will be used to finalise the business case for submission to the Capital Programme Board. Budget estimated, as we know in the Cabinet report, was 180,000. The estimated start date is Q2 next year, next financial year, and estimated end date will be Q3. Housestead Leisure Centre, the business case was to include a desired outcome, which is to replace or overlay squash court and rear link flat roofs and a safe system of access. The project initiation document has been completed and lodged with procurement to programme tender, further surveys and specification to be commissioned. This information will be used to finalise the business case for submission to the Capital Programme Board. Budget estimated in Cabinet report was 400,000. The estimated start and end date will be in the 26-27 financial year, with timings to be confirmed in consultation with our leisure team. And in reference to the project you specifically mentioned in regards to Silver End Village Hall, that has been referenced in this chamber on a number of occasions. The desired outcome is to replace the roof, and there's some look at the work of heating plant, building management system, pipework and radiators. The project initiation document has been completed and lodged with procurement to programme tender and specification to be commissioned. This information again will be used to finalise the business case for submission to our Capital Programme Board. The estimated budget is 500,000. The estimated start date is Q2, quarter 2 of the next financial year, and estimated end date will be quarter 3 of the next financial year. And just as an added on to this, as I've mentioned before in this chamber, solar panels are to be included from a financial point of view, as I've said before. We put provision in the next year's budget for that, though that just as a caveat, that's just subject to relevant planning approvals, but very much keen to add them. I hope that brings members up to date, and yourself, Councillor Williams, up to date, and yourself, Chairman, in regards where we're at with the Community Asset Fund. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bowers, and thank you, members. That concludes this item. Any question requiring a written response will be answered within 10 working days of this meeting and shared with all members. So we will now proceed to agenda item 8, the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report. Members, this report commences on page 7 of tonight's agenda, and as this item is to receive and note, there is no requirement to seek a seconder for this item.
So the economy grew by 0.7% in the first quarter of the year, but growth slowed to 0.3% in the second quarter, indicating a more subdued outlook for the remainder of the year. These developments highlight the importance of robust financial management and risk mitigation in our Treasury strategy, ensuring the Council remains well positioned to navigate the evolving economic landscape. The Treasury details for the Council are contained within the report to provide you with an update on our current investment position and Treasury management approach. Just to add to that, as detailed in the report, it's good to note that typically our investment balances reach their highest point around September before gradually decreasing over the following 6 months. This year, balances have remained higher in the first half due to the timing differences between collecting council tax and business rates and the payment of precepts to major authorities, as well as the current schedule of capital spending. As a result, we expect our cash balances to reduce by the end of the financial year. In line with the CIPFA code and government guidance, we continue to invest funds prudently, prioritising the security and liquidity of our treasury investments before seeking the best possible return. Our main objective is to maintain a careful balance between risk and reward, minimising the chance of losses and ensuring we do not receive unacceptably low investment income. Regarding the compliance, I'm pleased to report that all Treasury management activities undertaken up to the end of August are fully complied with the CIPFA Code of Practice and our authorities approved Treasury management strategy. This demonstrates our ongoing commitment to prudent financial management and robust compliance with all statutory and strategic requirements. Just to note, on the 7th of August, CIPFA published a consultation paper regarding the Prudential Code and the Treasury Management Code of Practice. The purpose of this consultation is to gather views on whether these two codes remain fit for purpose following the substantial changes introduced in 2021. In particular, CIPFA is seeking feedback on whether the recent changes have sufficiently reduced the risks associated with commercial activity. In conclusion, I welcome the noting of this report that helps the Council to demonstrate that it is achieving its corporate objectives of being a high-performing organisation that delivers excellent value for money services and is delivering better outcomes for residents and businesses and reducing costs to taxpayers. Details of how the Council's Treasury management activities contribute towards those objectives are set out in the mid-year report for 25-26, which is included in tonight's agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bowers. Do any members wish to speak on this item? No? Thank you, members. Councillor Bowers, as no one's wished to speak, is there anything you'd like to clarify before we note this report? Thank you, Councillor Bowers. So, members, as this report is for noting, please indicate that the report is noted by way of hands. Thank you, members. The report has now been noted, so we'll now proceed to agenda item 9, the Local Council Tax Support Scheme for 2026-27. So this report is set out on pages 14 to 16 of tonight's agenda. And again, please can I invite Councillor Kevin Bowers to present this report. Please can I remind you though that before your speech, you can make your speech, the report must be seconded. So can we please seek a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
Reserve right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bowers, please can I now invite you to present your report?
Thank you, Chairman. The Local Council Tax Support Scheme for working age claimants was introduced in April 2013, replacing the previous council tax benefit system. Each year, the council reviews the scheme to ensure it meets local needs. If no local scheme is approved, a government default applies. A new working age scheme was approved in December 2023 and implemented from April 2024, alongside the statutory pension age scheme. For 2025-26, the only change is the end of the transitional protection from the first year. The scheme provides a substantial support to the lowest income households, offering up to a 77% discount on council tax. It is designed to be straightforward for claimants and efficient for the council to administer. Support is targeted at families and households with disabled members, ensuring help reaches those most in need. Administrative improvements allow staff to focus on assurance checks and complex cases, especially as housing benefit claimants transition to universal credit. Feedback from claimants has been positive and the scheme is achieving its objectives. No further changes are proposed at this time. I do need to provide Council, however, with an update regarding the potential impact following the Chancellor's budget. This doesn't alter the scheme at all, however, I feel it is information that members should be aware of. Following the autumn budget statement, the Chancellor of the Exchequer has announced the removal of the two-child cap on claiming universal credit and tax credits. This change means that households with 3 or more children will see an increase in their benefit entitlement. Our working age local council tax support scheme operates a banded system, awarding a percentage discount on council tax based on household income and the number of children in the family. While the scheme does provide increased financial support for families with children, it currently only recognises incremental changes up to families with 2. Families with more than 2 children do not receive a higher percentage of local council tax support for each additional child within the same income band. It is important to note that, as the scheme is linked to household income, any extra benefit received due to the removal of the two-child cap will be considered in the assessment of the household income for council tax support. Our service has modelled a range of scenarios. These show that depending on the number of children in a household above the current limit, families will generally be better off overall because of the uplift in universal credit. Even in cases where the increase in household income could make a claimant eligible for council tax support, this outcome is more likely for larger families. The council still retains an exceptional hardship scheme for households facing specific circumstances where these changes may result in difficulties paying council tax. As I said, this shouldn't alter the scheme. However, this doesn't alter the scheme, sorry. However, I just thought members should be aware of that point. In conclusion, I am seeking for council approval for the recommendation as set out in tonight's agenda. There should be no changes to the local discretionary elements of the working age local council tax support scheme, and the scheme will be applied for 2026-27. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bowers. Do any members wish to speak on this item? Councillor Wright.
Well, it's more of a typo, I think. On page 16, paragraph 7.1, I think the last figure shouldn't be 2025, it should be 2026. I don't know if that's correct.
Yeah, that seems. Yeah, I accept that. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out this evening. Thank you. Do any other members wish to speak this evening? Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you much. Just to wholly support this scheme, which this council has been instrumental in applying. This scheme helps those who are at the very bottom edge of needing support, especially from paying council tax when it's a flip of a coin between looking after your families and keeping them fed versus being able to fulfil some of your statutory duties around paying council tax. What it doesn't do is it doesn't absolve someone completely from paying council tax. But I think it's also quite right that the Cabinet member highlighted that with the recent changes to the benefit cap, that this might actually put people into a slightly disadvantaged position if they were relying on the local council tax scheme now. I think it's absolutely right that was to be highlighted this evening, but on the whole, I'm proud that this council has a scheme like this and we apply fairly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Cunningham, as seconder, and having reserved your right to speak, would you like to speak now?
Nothing else to add, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cunningham. So Councillor Bowers, as the proposer, would you like to reply to the speech made by Councillor Ritchie before I put the recommendation to the vote?
Thank you, Chairman. Just thank you for the kind words, and thank you, Councillor Wright. We've obviously acknowledged that typo. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So, members, the recommendation is set out on page 14 of the agenda, and it has been moved and seconded. So all those in favour of the recommendation, please indicate. All those against the recommendation, please indicate. And any abstentions? Just one abstention. Yeah. So the recommendation has been approved this evening. So thank you, members. We will now proceed to agenda item 10, the polling place review. Members, this report is set out commencing on page 17 of tonight's agenda. Before I pass over to Councillor Graham Butland, Leader of the Council, I'd like to hand over to Dan Gascoigne, our Chief Executive, who would like to give an update in regards to one of the recommendations this evening.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's come to my attention, regrettably, since the agenda was published, that the recommendation doesn't mention two of the polling districts in Witham that have been recommended for changes in paragraphs 4.22 and 4.25. That's the Templars Community Hut moving to Rickstones Church on page 21 of the paper. So recommendation 2.1 should read as follows. The Council agreed to change the polling stations relating to polling districts AN, AY2, DG, AQ1 and CH as set out in this report to be implemented ahead of the next scheduled election in May 2026, and recommendation 2.2 is unchanged, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So before I hand over to Councillor Butland, I need to ask for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak? Thank you. So Councillor Butland, please may I ask you to speak on this matter?
Thank you, Chairman. Although the paper is in my name and it's up to me to present the recommendations, can I assure people that we have not played any part in the way in which the polling districts are dealt with? That is dealt with entirely by the returning officer, Dan Gascoigne, and the elections team. It just needs a member to formally propose them, which I'm going to do tonight. If there are any questions which members have about any of the specific ones, then I would ask you, Chairman, to allow the CEO, Dan Gascoigne, to answer those questions.
Thank you, Councillor Butland, of course. Do any members wish to speak on this item? Please keep your hand up until you've been acknowledged. Thank you. I'll start with Councillor Bowers.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to just have a few words in regards to tonight's report and the recommendations, specifically the recommendations that affect the ward that I represent in regards to the polling districts AY1 and AZ2, and just welcome the recommendations on the decision to keep as is the current arrangements. I appreciate the current arrangements are not ideal for everyone, staff included. However, in regards, I think the disadvantages weigh out the potential advantages in regards a potential move to the Christchurch pharmacy. I think would be the wrong decision at the end of the day. Though I appreciate it's a central location, but it is a very busy location. Parking there is an absolute nightmare. And I know that myself when I even have to visit the pharmacy and the like, but also that, like it, as it's referenced in the report, the 38-minute walk from the current polling station, I just think that is a bit too much. But I just wanted to stand to just welcome the recommendation, especially in that part. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bowers. Councillor Pell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Referring to DG, which is my ward, we refer to the responses in there. Under response number 9, the 3 pigeons, that's me. But there is nowhere else in that ward to put another polling station. The porter cabin that we've had is not suitable. It's not suitable for people with disabilities, and they have to go to a loo outside the building, and that's not on. The pigeons is fine. It's part of the community, but if you can overcome the people getting in because it's got steps up the front, fine. And also the parking. It's got a small car park. The report refers to car parks nearby. I don't know any car parks nearby. And where the pub is situated, I think that you would have to do something so nobody could pull up on the main road there. That main road is the A131 strategic lorry route. That you can't have people pulling up there because it will cause real traffic problems and probably cause an accident. And I don't think that there's a disabled bay in the car park there, because we had that problem at Trinity School because people with disabilities couldn't get into the school. But we overcome that problem. So if you can overcome the things that are in the way, fine. But I am concerned of them parking on the main road and getting into the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pell. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm grateful to the Chief Executive for clarifying about the recommendations because I wasn't clear from the report. I don't know so much about some of the polling places, but the one I do know a lot about is the Templars Whittam one, as I was the county councillor there for 8 years. And I'm afraid I can't support the paper tonight because I think it's the wrong thing to do to move the box from Templars to the Church on Rickstones Road. There are several reasons for that. One is the church has very limited parking and it's on a very busy road. Parking on the road there is simply dangerous and we shouldn't be encouraging it. And the second thing is, those of us who know that ward well know that unfortunately the Templars box is one of the lowest turnout boxes in the district. It's very, very low. And by moving the polling station that far away from the main central population, which is the Templars Estate and Cressing Road, you are likely to get even fewer people voting physically. So I'm not saying I've got a solution to that, but I just think it is the wrong thing to do to move it down there, and for that reason I can't support the recommendation. There was a comment in the report about lack of alternatives. Although it probably wouldn't help for this specific one, it does worth repeating that Braintree Council did own a community building in Whittam North Ward, which was demolished to make way for housing. It was never replaced, and the Section 106 money for a community building in North Ward for community infrastructure has consistently gone to the south of Whittam. to build the new community centre there and not to re-provide in Whittam North Ward. So I think there's several issues there. And just finally, I thought the comments made by the ward councillors were very strong in the comment section on the consultation. So I'm afraid on this one I can't support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Abbots. Councillor Finken.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would agree with the comments made by Councillor Pell. I also represent the same ward, DG. It's disappointing, I think, that we have to use a pub for a polling station. I take it that I understand that there are 2 villages which do have that facility, but I don't think it's the same in a town where there should be other facilities. And I think Councillor Abbott has hit on another problem, which is when community facilities disappear, they're not replaced. We did have the Baptist Church and the Baptist Church Hall nearby, which were used as polling stations for many years. They have also been replaced by housing, and we haven't got anywhere else. The porter cabins are, as people have said, far from ideal, and I think the officers who have to work in the polling stations have made the right comments about them, that they're very unsatisfactory as a working environment. So I think we might have to accept the 3 Pigeons as the polling station, but I do think the small car park, the busy main road, people dropping off and picking up, when people go to vote and so on, could cause problems. But I think we have to monitor it, and if it doesn't work, then we might have to think of something else for future elections. But yes, at the moment, although I'm not very happy about it, I think we've got to accept it.
Thank you, Councillor Finken. Councillor Staines.
AY1, echoing the comments of Councillor Bowers, the potential change in polling location from Notley High School to Christchurch, an officer estimated 38 minutes on foot, is just too far. Parking at Christchurch is tight and limited, as we saw in COVID, and with its role as a polling hub for multiple divisions, it's not sufficient and may require would-be voters to park elsewhere and walk, which may include an extra cost and deter participation. So in short, the proposed location, or the potential suggestion, is less convenient and acceptable, and its selection is unlikely to sustain and increase resident participation in elections, which I'm sure we as a group would all like to see improve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Staines. And Councillor Diamond.
Thank you. Many people have been using the same polling station for many years, often since they first started voting. While there are clearly polling stations that need to change, it is important that voters know that there has been a change and where it has moved to. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe legally all the council must do is to state the polling station on the polling card, but this will likely not be enough for many people. I'll be interested to know what the council intends to do to keep voters informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Diamond. So, Councillor Cunningham as seconder, and having reserved your right to speak, please can I invite you to speak now?
Thank you, Chairman. Nothing else to add.
Thank you. Councillor Butland, as proposer, would you like to reply to the speeches, or would you like to ask Dan Gascoigne to reply on your behalf?
Before I sort of formally propose it, I don't know whether there's anything else the Chief Exec would want to add.
Briefly, Chairman, thank you, members, for the comments. Very, very much appreciated, and I'll obviously take all of that back to the team. Just to, specifically on the pigeons, I could say there will be a ramp to enable disabled access on polling day. And the other general point, I think, which I've taken from this is obviously the importance of monitoring any changes that we do make, and we'll absolutely do that, as well as making sure any changes are fully promoted for public awareness. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Councillor Butland.
And that, I've nothing further to add and would formally move the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. The members, the recommendations have already been explained, the changes to those by Dan, and they're set out on page 17 of the agenda, and they've been moved and seconded this evening. So all those in favour of the recommendations, please indicate. All those against the recommendations, please indicate. And any abstentions? Yeah. Okay, thank you, members. The recommendations have been approved. We'll now proceed to agenda item 11 to receive the Cabinet's response to the scrutiny review into the North Essex Parking Partnership. Members, the report for this item commences on page 46 of tonight's agenda, and as this item is to note, there is no requirement to seek a seconder for this item. So can I please invite Councillor Graham Butland, Leader of the Council, to present this report.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry Councillor Heath is not able to be with us this evening, but he was present at the Cabinet meeting where this was discussed. You will see that there were two recommendations made by his committee and how we have responded to them. He certainly indicated at the meeting that he was happy with those responses, and therefore I would ask this council to note the situation as set out in this paper.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butland. Sorry, I'll repeat myself one more time. So in Councillor Heath's absence this evening, I'll be inviting Councillor Billy Taylor, the Vice Chairman of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee, who carried out the review alongside Councillor Heath, to speak first on this item, should he wish to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank the officers, particularly Jessica Mann, for all of her work to make sure that the committee runs as smoothly as it can. It was a pleasure to meet NEP in the flesh, and it was a scrupulous examination of the topic, and I have to pay tribute to Councillor David Holland for his probing questions, which I think established, and I hope I'm right, that NEP doesn't actually undertake economic impact assessments on their proposals, particularly on Whittam and Halstead, their proposals. So I think you exposed or unearthed that, Councillor Holland. It was a real pleasure. It felt like watching a House of Commons select committee. That was the quality of debate. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Billy Taylor. Are there any other members who wish to speak on this item? And please raise your hand if you wish to do so. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chairman. I rise unsurprisingly to support the recommendation, but more importantly, perhaps to expand on why the Corporate Scrutiny Committee's review of the NEPP was valuable in a way that's not actually reflected really in the report before us. And I'm confident in that what I'm going to say now will resonate with members opposite. I certainly know that Councillor Heath, who sadly is not with us this evening, was vocally in alignment with what I was probing, as Councillor Taylor says. The conclusion that BDC should stick with NEPP for the remainder of the Council's existence was, in modern parlance, a no-brainer. Why on earth would we create upheaval so late in the day? However, for me, the most important outcome, as I've already said, of the review was a clear assertion from the NEPP officers relating to the need for assessments of the potential economic impact of proposed new parking measures on the host economy, not just on the council. At the committee meeting, it was put to NEPP officers that hitherto the NEPP had not conducted full economic impact assessments, that is to say, assessment of the wider impact of the measures proposed and charges that they had in the past recommended. As they say, they accepted this. It was then put to them that in future, and as a result of LGR, which we've discussed earlier, the role of NEPP would be subsumed into any future unitary authorities. They also agreed with this, Chairman. The officers then agreed that the impact of parking measures and charges on the hosting local communities, say town centres, should in future be quantified and considered and help shape their proposals. This last comment is of critical importance going forwards. All of this can be seen on the Council's YouTube channel in the recording of the Scrutiny Committee's deliberations, 23rd of April of this year. And for those who've really got nothing better to do, it starts at 1 hour and 8 minutes and concludes 4 minutes later. Members across the Chamber have expressed concerns at the potential impacts of NEPP proposed parking measures on the shopping centres in our towns. Such impacts have not been adequately considered in the past is lamentable, but our task is to ensure that we learn from the past in order to make the future better. I hope that following the Corporate Scrutiny Committee's work and the evidence from these officers, that the NEPP will in future ensure that their recommendations are informed and shaped by the wider economic assessments that they now say are important. As a result, the future of car parking decision making looks brighter, because in the YouTube footage that I've referred to ever, well worth watching, you can hear these NEPP officers use words including unwise, saying that it would be unwise not to do such wider economic impact assessments on host economies affected by their proposals. Foolish, narrow-minded and naive were also words officers used to describe failure to do economic impact assessments on their proposals. These are their words, the NEPP officers' words, not mine. I warmly commend these officers on their openness and frankness of their comment. These assertions are for me the most important takeaway from the entire process. The paper before us shows that we have decided to go with the status quo in the sense that we are sticking with NEPP for the duration. But it's far more important for the medium to long-term future, for you and for those you represent, that as a result of the scrutiny review, we got agreement about the need to properly assess the wider economic impacts of future proposals. Intelligence born of such assessment can ensure that NEPP and its successor organisation can appropriately shape parking measures. After all, as Chairman, as one of the officers said, and I quote, "Parking measures must be right for the community." Mr. Chairman, I agree with him. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. I also have Councillor Van Dolken. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Van Dolken.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and it's a hard act to follow, Councillor Holland. I was the previous BDC representative on NEP, so I've followed this scrutiny with interest, and I'm pleased to support the recommendation of the report, particularly in terms of ensuring transparency in the decisions by NEP in its dealings with this and with other member councils. Would the leader, who is our representative now, kindly update members on developments in the unilateral NEP proposals to introduce on-street parking restrictions and payment in Witham, Halsted and across the road?
Sorry, Councillor Van Dolken. Unfortunately, as part of the debate, we're not able to ask questions at this stage, but any written question could be answered at any time.
Thank you very much.
No, I do apologise for cutting you off there. Thank you, Councillor Van Dolken. I've also had indication to speak from Councillor Abbott.
Bearing in mind your advice, Chairman, I'll have to reword what I was going to say. Following on from what Councillor Holland said, a lot of what I agree with, and referring to the recommendations, there were two recommendations, and they were very sort of generic around, continuing to liaise and engage with the district council. So I'm wondering, regarding Witham, the proposals for Witham Town Centre, which I personally regard as potentially disastrous, and where the NEP consultation says it will be good for business, and yet they have not carried out the assessments, whether the council has the ability at some point to make a decision that it will not accept it as the host authority, Witham being within this district, and not proceed with them, block them in effect.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Butland, would you like to reply to any of the speeches before I ask members to note the report?
Thank you, Chairman. One of the delights of having colleagues who have responsibility elsewhere, which compromises them, actually being on that, where they actually should be, it has rested to me for the last 2 years to go there. And what Councillor Holland and a number have raised is excellent, but it was even worse than that. Because at the first meeting I went to, there was the budget for, now I can't remember, it was 23, 24, 24, 25, but had a figure of £146,000 in it, which was the expected income from imposing the very parking issues that we're talking about at the moment. And it had not been approved by the committee even. I think there was a tendency of the way in which that committee was then run, basically to do what it liked. And unfortunately, not only did they get an awkward sod like me on it, but at the same time they got awkward sods from two other councils, which has in fact made a considerable improvement in the way in which they work on that. Clearly, in terms of, and I know I haven't been asked the question, but it was raised in debate, Chairman, so I will refer to it. Where we are now, or NEP is now, on the issue of the proposed parking changes in Halstead, Witham, and here in Braintree. So it was withdrawn, as I say, from going ahead, and the 146,000 was found from elsewhere. There has now been a public consultation. It took place between the 23rd of October and the 14th of November. It was designed to give members of the public the chance to give their views on the proposal on street parking arrangements, and a final vote and decision will be taken via the partnership vote, because we are part of the partnership at a meeting. That was originally planned for January, but it will now be on the agenda for the 19th of March meeting, which will be held at Clacton Town Hall, because there's been such a high volume of responses that NEP are unable to prepare the papers and make recommendations. The proposed parking arrangements have been changed and now include a parking arrangement which includes a first hour stay free of charge. The free hour, however, must be covered by a ticket or digital stay, depending on whether there is a pay and display machine at sale, even though there is no tariff to pay for the first hour. Now, personally, I do have a bit of sympathy with that, because if I pull up outside here at 1 o'clock, and I don't have to show any indication of when I arrived, unless there is an officer there at 1 o'clock, and again at 2 o'clock, there is no way of imposing that at all. So I'm not so anti the fact that I should have to put a ticket in my window to show what time I came. And the same thing also applies to blue badge holders, etc., who do have signs which show when they came. There's then, you would be able to extend the time of staying if you wished. There are two areas, High Street, Halstead, and Newland Street, Witham, which are cash machines, and Bocking Street, Braintree, and the centre of Halstead, which are digital only. But however, I have been, and you will see from the meetings of NEP, been very strong about I think the adverse impact that charges would originally have, which was what was originally put forward, on the high street. We do want turnover, because obviously the shops want and businesses want to have customers coming in, leaving space for other customers as well. So we will await to see what the recommendations are, and I can assure you, Chairman, and the rest of the Council, that we will be very forthright on this. When you have an organisation like NEP, where basically one is sharing one's right to self-governance, if I put it that way, with other councils. Eventually, you know, you are taking decisions, and you may get decisions which you don't necessarily either wholly agree with or indeed agree with. And then the option is whether you actually withdraw. But of course, if you do withdraw, you then would have to bring in your own system of how you would manage on-street parking so that it didn't become a free-for-all. So it's not that easy, but I don't think the issue has been helped by the history and the way in which the North Essex Parking Partnership actually went about things. I think it is getting better. I think it is getting its house in order. But I wait to see with interest this. And of course, I will, as soon as the report is done, members will also see it. And if it's going to the meeting on the 19th of March, if members would let me have any comments they have as soon as that report is made public, then I will very happily take them into account.
Thank you for the update, Councillor Butland, and I'm sure members will be very keen to hear the outcome of that meeting. So members, as this report is just for noting this evening, please indicate that the report has been noted by way of hands. Thank you, members. The report has been noted. We will now proceed to agenda item 12, which was the scrutiny review into antisocial behaviour. Cabinet's response to the report and recommendations of the Corporate Policy Development Committee. This report commences on page 50 of tonight's agenda, and as this item is to note, there was also no requirement to seek a seconder for this item. I'll now invite Councillor Mary Cunningham, our Cabinet Member for Stronger Communities, to introduce this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. On the 22nd of September, Councillor Courtauld, as Chairman of the Corporate Policy Development Committee, presented a report on ASB to Cabinet on ASB to Cabinet with 4 recommendations from that committee. The recommendations and responses are set out in the agenda on pages 51 to 54. I thank Councillor Courtauld and his committee for the detailed report. I would just like to highlight a few points. There has been a huge amount of positive work in the ASB space. Much covers the 4 recommendations and beyond. There is a complete shift to being far more victim focused, a dedicated victim portal on the BDC website, implementation of the Essex Frontline mobile app for referrals and signposting to support services available, greater investment with additional posts, an ASB manager and an ASB triage coordinator, a better use of technology. The Noise app will be going live in January. The review of the Town Centre PSPO to ensure it remains effective and positive for the community. An ask of councillors would be to continue to raise awareness of how to report incidents, briefing notes circulated to all town and parish councils, signposting to the support services available, highlighting the BDC website. The team of officers at BDC certainly won't be sitting back and will continue to evolve this area to ensure it meets the needs of the community. I just want to give an update on an additional piece of work that has been carried out since the scrutiny review. An ASB workshop was set up in mid-November, hosted by BDC, with 50 participants, including BDC officers, police partners and a senior representative from each housing provider that operates in the district. Presentations were made from various organisations around powers available under the antisocial behaviour legislation and presentations on the impact on ASB victims. The aim was to provide housing associations with support and advice on how they can issue community protection warnings as a responsibility sits with them around their tenants' behaviour. Finally, I would like to thank our ASB manager, his colleagues, and our CSB team and partners for the amount of work that has been put in to completely overhaul the process relating to ASB in the district. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. I would now like to invite Councillor George Coulter, Chairman of the Corporate Policy Development Committee, who carried out the review, to speak first on this item, should he wish to do so.
Thank you, Chairman. In September 2024, our committee undertook a review of the Council's antisocial behaviour policies, as Councillor Cunning has already said. We looked at the roles, responsibilities and powers of the Council as far as ASB is concerned, and how effective our policies were. We had a series of evidence gathering sessions looking not only at the Council, but also at those outside the Council who might also be relevant or responsible. We looked at enforcement powers, how they're deployed, and not only how effective, but precisely what our policies actually were. We are very grateful to the officers from the Community Services, Environmental Health, Operations and Housing, and to Jessica Mann, Kim Mayo and Emma Wisby for all their help with this. We eventually came up with 4 recommendations, and of course the committee is pleased that our first 3 recommendations have been accepted and fulfilled, and that the 4th had already been identified and acted upon by the Council's own internal parallel review. Sadly, antisocial behaviour is a perennial issue, and when it does affect our constituents, it can have a very serious impact indeed. Of course, as a Council, we must do all we can to reduce it, support the victims, and deter the perpetrators. I hope these recommendations go some way towards achieving this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Coulters. Are there any other members that wish to speak on this item? I'll start with Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and I'm pleased to support the review as set out this evening. And I also mentioned this when I was at the Cabinet meeting recently. I think what I see this as I said at the Cabinet meeting, was something that's as important as any other contract or policy that we look at going forward to LGR, because this is about our people and our place and resolving issues in the heart of our communities. I think it is a good refresh of antisocial behaviour. I'm pleased with the service reviews and working with our stakeholders, and also the appointment of the new ASB enforcement manager, better communications with our town and parish councils, and the victim centre focus. I do, however, feel in Sybil Headingham that we have actually become victims of antisocial behaviour. And I just wanted to update the Cabinet member, and I will email her again, on the Sybil Headingham graffiti. In my 23 years as a district councillor, I have never seen graffiti like this or anywhere else in our district. Everything has been reported. I will forward all the photographs to you, with a lot more happening over the weekend, and also now going into Suffolk as well. So there may actually be some cross-boundary working going on there as well. But we tick all those boxes in terms of the distress and the anxiety this is causing. And thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beavis. Councillor Bowers-Flint.
Thank you, Chairman. I had the pleasure of opening this training thing but what I was more delighted to see was the housing associations that actually attended that, because there are times when we do struggle to talk to the housing associations. They don't necessarily want to always communicate with this council, but they filled the room that day. And I think that's important, because they have a big role and responsibility in antisocial behaviour. And I think the other thing that we need to get over, and our new website is absolutely fantastic, it really is. It's so informative, because what is antisocial behaviour to me may not be antisocial behaviour to Councillor Beavis, for argument's sake. And that's how it goes throughout the district. It's just a fact of life, that what annoys one person doesn't necessarily annoy the other. So I think it's important that the public have got the access to the facts and they can report what their problems are, because that is so important. And there is a lot of it out, and trust me, Councillor Beavis, the perpetrators will get caught who are doing that in Sybil Headingham. They will. It may take a little while, but they will get caught, because it is unacceptable in this day and age for anybody to go around doing anything like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer-Flint. Could I please now ask Councillor Van Dolcombe?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Beavis has stolen my thunder. I have the pleasure of living in her ward, her and Councillor Taylor's, and I was going to mention exactly the same thing, that this, I haven't lived there for 23 years, but quite a while, and I've never seen anything like it. And I'm pleased to note the scrutiny report and the cabinet response, and indeed the overall greater emphasis on tackling these kind of, I'll call them scourges. I very much hope that this sort of behaviour will be one of the things which can be dealt with, and I have reported it as well.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dolken. Councillor Cunningham, would you like to reply to the speeches before I ask members to note the reports?
Thank you, Chairman. I was just going to say Councillor Van Delken has reported that, but if you have photographs, Councillor Beavers, that would be very helpful. Excuse me. And I think Councillor Bowes-Flint, who I believe welcomed everybody to the special workshop. I wasn't able to be there. And I think that Councillor Bowes has said that every housing association that we have in our district was represented there by some senior officials. So they've gone to the highest, and the feedback has come back that they will be actually training their staff properly, because a lot of the powers lie with them. So, yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cunningham. Members, as this report is also for noting this evening, please indicate that the report has been noted by a way of hands. Thank you very much, members. The report has been noted. So, members, this item now concludes the business for this evening. Thank you for your attendance and the incredible debate that you've all participated in this evening, and to those watching on the Council's YouTube channel. The recording of this meeting will be published on the Council's YouTube channel as soon as possible. I would just like to take this opportunity to welcome all members, officers and residents, and wish them all a very happy Christmas, but also a very happy and also healthy new year when it comes around. Please be reminded that the next meeting of Full Council, though, is due to be held on the 16th of February at 7:15, and calendar invites have already been circulated. I will now formally close this meeting of Full Council at 9:53. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you.